Hello! Here, I'll be responding to the channel Physically Debunked, who pointed out a flaw in my presentation of Christopher Menzel's argument from sets. Now, I want to be clear, the argument itself is fine. Physically Debunked's objection only applies to my flawed presentation. But for me, that's actually worse than if the argument did have a fatal flaw. I strive to present complicated arguments with a high degree of clarity, so the fact that I failed to do that here is really annoying. Anyways, I won't re-explain the argument from sets here. I already made an animated video about it and talked about it on Adherent Apologetics channel. If you aren't familiar with the argument, you should go watch one of those, because there's a lot of mathematics and metaphysics that you need to go over before this argument will make any sense. And you better buckle up, because things are going to get complicated. So, what was the fatal flaw of my presentation of the argument? Well, I posed the following question in both times I presented it: why isn't there a set of all sets? I then tried to make the case that Platonists would have a harder time answering this than divine conceptualists. But Physically Debunked was unimpressed with my case.
Well, for any number of ZFC sets you're looking at, you can have a set of all those sets. But the point is, there are infinitely many larger sets than the one you've just constructed. You just explained why there is no set of all sets. We know why there isn't one the same way we know there's no largest natural number. We can explain why there is no set of all sets, so why argue that the lack of one is somehow a problem?
My mistake in presenting the argument is that throughout my presentation, I was using the word set inconsistently. I either used it to refer to a collection, which given realism is an abstract object, or a collection that exists within Zermelo-Fraenkel set theory. This was sloppy on my part. So to clarify things, I'm going to use the term collection object to replace my former use of the word set. Any abstract object which in some way has members or is a collection is a collection object. Usually though, the word set refers specifically to a collection object in Zermelo-Fraenkel set theory. But to be precise, I'm going to call such sets ZFC sets to avoid any ambiguity. Now, with our new terms, we can look at my question again. Why isn't there a set of all sets? If we take this to mean, why isn't there a ZFC set which contains all ZFC sets, Physically Debunked is right. This is indeed easy to answer. Any set in Zermelo-Fraenkel set theory is unable to contain all of the sets in Zermelo-Fraenkel set theory given its hierarchical structure. What I meant by my question, though, is, why isn't there a collection object which contains all ZFC sets? This new collection object wouldn't be a ZFC set. It would be bigger than any ZFC set. That's the question that the Platonists will have some difficulty answering. Fortunately, Physically Debunked has us covered.
On Platonism, all the sets in ZFC exist. If all of these exist, then it seems strange to think that there isn't some collection of all of these sets that also exists. We can talk about the whole collection, the totality of ZFC sets, but such a thing doesn't exist on Platonism, so there must be a problem. Well, it turns out actually that there may be no set of all sets, but there is such a thing as the totality of all ZFC sets. It's just not itself a set. Let's go back to the natural numbers. There is no largest natural number, but we can still refer to the totality of natural numbers. And we can even have a number of all natural numbers. The number of all natural numbers is infinity. Infinity isn't the largest natural number, since it's not a natural number at all, but it can still be understood as the number of all natural numbers. In the same way, there is no largest set in ZFC. There is no set of all sets. But there is such a thing as the totality of all ZFC sets. Let's call the totality of all ZFC sets the class of all sets. The class of all sets is not a set, since the set of all sets is mathematically inconsistent. But we can still have the class of all ZFC sets, and this would exist on Platonism. It comes down to what objects you can define. In ZFC set theory, we only have sets, and the axioms they obey means that you can't have a set of all sets. There is, however, a collection of all ZFC sets, and so we can extend ZFC set theory to something called von Neumann-Bernays Gödel, or NBG set theory, which introduces classes alongside sets. In NBG set theory, there is a class of all sets.
Okay, so Physically Debunked can answer even that question. There is a collection object which contains all ZFC sets, but this collection object isn't itself a ZFC set, so we give it the new name of a class.
Anyway, that's it for this set theory argument. It gave me a nice excuse to talk about some mathematics and set theory, but apart from that, it really isn't worth taking seriously.
Oh, before you dismiss the argument, hear me out. I'm going to show that the introduction of classes is actually just a band-aid. It merely kicks the can up the road, and my earlier question rears its head again. Here's a visual representation. Platonists want to say collection objects exist. If we just go willy-nilly positing all the sets in naive set theory, we get contradictions. So we get some sort of rules that define which collection objects exist. The axioms of Zermelo-Fraenkel's set theory. They're the best candidate we have right now. So these ZFC sets are really existing collection objects. Then we ask, hey, is there a collection of all ZFC sets? A Platonist should want to say yes, since the ZFC sets are right over there in the Platonic realm. It seems like we should be able to collect them together. So the Platonist says, yeah, there are these things called classes. These bigger collection objects can collect the ZFC sets together. Now, a question Physically Debunked never asked is, hey, is there a collection of all classes? Does some collection object contain all of them? The Platonist should still want to say yes, since the classes are right over there in the Platonic realm. It seems like we should be able to collect them together. So the Platonist says, yeah, there are collection objects that contain the classes. We can call these even bigger collection objects conglomerates. But you should start to see the problem here. I could just ask if there is a collection object which contains all conglomerates. No matter how far we go, even infinitely far, we could still ask, hey, Mr. Platonist, all those collection objects you think exist, is there a collection of them? The Platonist is arbitrarily forced to stop at some point, because the moment they think they've got a handle on what collection objects necessarily exist in the Platonic realm, I'm gonna pop out of the bushes and ask them if there is a collection of all those collection objects. Such an arbitrary cutoff is problematic for Platonism, because the existence of a collection object is supposed to be guaranteed by the existence of the collection object's members. The divine conceptualist, on the other hand, isn't too concerned with there being an arbitrary cutoff. Whenever God makes a set in his mind, that's due to a free act. So wherever the cutoff point is, it's due to God's free will. And God can make more sets if he ever feels like it, or if we humans get more complicated set theory. So Platonism still has a problem that divine conceptualism doesn't have. That's the end of this video. Thank you, Physically Debunked, for making a response video, and thank you, the viewer, for watching. Please subscribe and support me on Patreon if you enjoyed this content.